didn't want to interrupt your meeting.
Okay, you're on.
All right. David Berquist, who, Berquist. Sorry, I don't mean to do that, but I get something in my head and it doesn't leave. He's going to present on the Michigan basins and minerals. And as you can see, he has a big display table set up over there with lots of examples of some of the things that he's going to talk about. He's presented at many events, both public and private, science fairs, the Grand Ledge Color Cruise, the Michigan Historical Museum, Greenfield Village for the Thomas the Tank Engine, Grandparents' Day, and the first Sundays of the month here at the Lansing Mall. So, and he's been at Sunfield several times. So we're very fortunate to have him. He contacted us because we have a map in at the library that he wanted a copy of, and so that's how we became connected with David. So, David Berquist.
Thank you, everyone. And well, the map is what started much of my learning, and it's neat about the mention of Greenville and the glider plane, because I grew up in Kingsford, Michigan, where Ford Motor had a huge plant for processing timber from the Ford company's timberlands in the Upper Peninsula, and the wood was brought in by rail and then processed to make wooden car parts, which were then shipped to the Detroit area. And in that processing, the chemists used everything about the tree except the rustling of the leaves and needles. Many byproducts, the Kingsford briquettes, they were made there, then moved to California, and different liquids and solvents were made, and some stuff just had no commercial use, so it was just dumped in different pits at the factory site. And 50 years later, 60 years later, those materials had decomposed and followed the soil levels as gas and came out in the basement of a home half a mile away, and the spark and blew the house up. So we've forever, everybody has treated as the solution to pollution is dilution. We can just spread it thin enough, nature will absorb it. And we've come full circle now, where nature's getting its last bats. And so we have also, the tanning leather liquids up at Rockford, and some sink oils in southwest Grand Rapids from the gypsum mine, and sinking cities in Florida and New Orleans, LA, from the oil extraction and the water extraction. So I have a little piece that no land ethic can turn back the time, and many of these processes are irreversible, and we've lost species and useful plants and insects and all the rest. And so a land ethic cannot prevent the alteration, management, and use of these resources, but it does affirm their right to continued existence, and at least in spots, their continued existence in a natural state. Do I hear an amen? Okay. So,
I told you we were going to have a
oh
concert.
yeah, there we go. Good timing. That's okay. So I enjoyed the trails and a smidge of Portland history for 40 years, moving from the Upper Peninsula, and I went in to the Portland Historical Room at the library because I saw where there was a canal street on the west side of the river, thought, well, maybe there was a mill race there once. And so I went in and right away I saw the map of the city showing the mill race and all that, so that was great. And then there was this tube of maps, and in it was the original of 1936 of this geological survey of the southern peninsula. And what really caught my eye was this cross-section from Alpena down to Dowagiac, showing the layers, because in books, it's only as wide as the page, so it's hard to show a bunch of people. And here it was. So our Mineral Society uses this at our annual show in Mason in October. And Mike Judd was very kind to help arrange for RCP to scan the map and make copies. And so we have that. And I kept my eyes open, and Archives of State of Michigan was able to find this. And it shows the Michigan Basin, one of the largest in the world, with Lansing down here, and it's stacked up like plates in a kitchen cabinet. And we see this with the layers, and then here we have a satellite view with the gravel and vegetation removed. And so, let's see, okay. So then, like this morning, we went out to Grand Rapids, city of Wyoming, to see if we could see any evidence of sinkholes that happened years ago, well, maybe 2008, but we didn't find any because, of course, the street would be filled in and repaved. But it was a good exercise. And then we have, let's see, what else we got. Oh, here's some gypsum from the mine under Wyoming, Michigan, because there used to be tours through it. So that was, something to look at. And, oh yeah, here's my dinner paper plates, but they're just stacked up like this, many layers. Michigan, the area of Michigan, that part of the Earth's surface, was once at the equator. And theory is with shifting of the plates, it moved north. And so there were shallow seas over all that intervening time, and it was somewhat landlocked, so the sediments would accumulate from the mountains that were up in the western upper peninsula, volcanoes around Iron County and Marquette. And then off to the east, there was the Appalachians, which were like the Rocky Mountains that we know, and that sediment came in and made all these layers of limestone and vegetation and shale and oil-bearing ground and salt, which is a large part of it. And then, so we have the salt of a map of Michigan of 1837 put by the railroads, republished in the last 60 years. It showed, salt licks or salt springs, different places, and around a big place was city of Saline. They had lots of salt springs, and so I went there, their Salt Springs Park, and they're trying, the Michigan Archaeological Society is working to restore that area, and with exhibits and a trail to show that with the changing lake levels and whatnot, there isn't a hydraulic head to push the water up out of the ground and come out at Saline, except for this one spring, which I took a picture, with the deer tracks around it, which we can look at later. And so that was a thrill.
Don't they salt mine in Detroit?
Yes.
And Manistee?
Yes. Manistee is with brine solution, pipe it down, and they can set the mix, the chemistry of that solution, so that it can extract table salt, NaCl, and then otherwise, at Everett, Michigan, Western Michigan University came up, or we looked at the old drill cores, and they realized that there was this huge deposit of potash just north of Lansing and Saginaw, all this under Manistee National Forest. So there's a potash mine being developed southwest of Everett. And it's it's believed to be the largest and purest in the world. Presently, for agricultural fertilizers, it comes from Western Canada. So some see it as quite a boon for Michigan. And I went to the Westphalia mill, and they had potash, commercial grade for the fields, and I have some samples if people want to afterward. And so an issue could be, well, it's 3,000 feet down, so it's those solutions again, which are made to selectively extract the potash rather than salt. So it's a fascinating thing. Then under Detroit, well, Melvindale, there was salt shaft was dug early part of the 1900s. 6 died in making the shaft. It took several years. And then it's a grid of tunnels, go for miles out, the size you could easily drive a bus through or have 2 buses meet in the tunnels. It's, the familiar city block style grid where they leave plenty of salt as columns down there, not extracting it. So there's some support, or a lot of support for the city above. And I was able to visit the underground tour there a couple times, and just stunning how that is. And I have some samples of salt from the mine that if people want, they can take with them. Everything on the first table, except the coral piece, is free. And then I'll show this to emphasize Michigan being at the center of ancient seas. Well, this is coral, of course. It's from Key West, but it shows how beautiful nature can be. And let's see. So no more tours of the Detroit mine for insurance, liability, or the gypsum mine in Grand Rapids. So that's disappointing, but that's how that went.
I took a school group, when they were still giving tours, we took a school class through the gypsum mines.
Oh,
in Grand
great,
Rapids.
great, because I have a copy of the old flyer where you can get in a kid for 50 cents. So yeah, that's huge. And so that might be of interest. Let's see. Oh, on salt, I had a write-up about salt somewhere. Well, here's another one that shows the layers, of rocks.
Turn around.
Ah, wrong one, thank you. Oh, I need an assistant. But here, how they can go, like pages, a pad of printer paper, if you push, it can go up and fold. Given enough time, heat, and pressure, rock acts like a fluid. Very slowly, but it can, or they can dip down depending how the plates are separating or pushing together. Let's see. Oh, excuse a minute. You might want to pause.
All right.
The U.S. is number 2 in producing as a percentage of world production of salt. China's number 1. And the salt from under Detroit is one of the big uses is for melting ice on roads. And it can produce millions of tons a year, I understand. And let's see. And there are other basins with, in the United States, besides our Michigan basin, which also goes off into Pennsylvania and New York, but out in Montana, southern Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And with the salt mine under Detroit, it was a narrow elevator, so stuff that goes down into the mine has to be disassembled, put together, and then it's left there when it wears out. There was a full machine shop down at the mining level to care for all that heavy equipment, just the huge trucks that, you know, the tire is twice the height of an adult. And they would bring out the salt. Okay, Detroit salt produces just under 2 million tons a year. And it's about 1,000 to 1,200 feet under grade level. Oh, well then, this map also shows other minerals in Michigan. It's on the Western Michigan Geology website. The state of Michigan years ago outsourced its geological survey of the first map and stuff like this to Western Michigan University. And so we have copper, Keweenaw Peninsula, iron, Ironwood, Iron River, Iron Mountain, and Marquette area. And both of my grandfathers worked in iron mines in Crystal Falls and up in Champion, Michigan. And so that was been very interesting. When I was young, there was pelletizing plants going in near Iron Mountain and up south of Marquette. And so we went to all those open houses and saw the big machinery, and I found my grandfather's birth, or what was it? Oh, the birth certificate of my mother, and it gave his occupation as trolley driver. You know, 80 years, 100 years ago, they had electricity and they were running little trains through the tunnels. And it showed my grandmother's occupation as wife, you know, just the sign of the times. Girl power, to be modern. Well, then gold, west of Marquette. So that's interesting. And also nickel and other minerals that are being dug now and taken in covered hopper cars over to Sudbury for processing. And there's talk of going into northern Menominee County for more of these minerals that are not available in the huge, close to the surface quantities of a century ago. So going back in and getting the raisins that are left. And let's see what else. Let's see, we got this, yes, we got, I think one other. Where'd it go?
There's one behind.
Ah, good help. Very good help.
Want me to hold it?
Okay, now or we can do it together.
There you go, you got your Vanna White.
Yay! Yep, so you can see this was produced by the Coalition for Education About Minerals, you know, funded by the mining companies. And so it shows the surface mining, strip mining, and the huge open pit mines like out west. You know, just the little trucks are like this at the bottom of the mine. And all the stuff that comes from rocks and minerals. Here's our underground mining. So it's a processing of all these different resources. Okay, well, that's good for that. And so my mineral society, you know, we're very interested in this, where I am, the Salt Springs Park, and we're hoping to be accepted as part of the archaeological digging around that area, because the animals love salt and the natives would follow them, and it was a great place to kill them, you know, the deer and whatnot. So there's arrowheads in the vicinity, so that would be huge for us. And I had the park commissioner of Saline gave me a tour of what they plan to do and what they've done, and he let me, because he's archaeology and I'm also stones, unusual or pretty stones, so he let me take all I wanted, which is very rare these days. And so, so I did, and because personally I feel the best rock in my pocket is the one I wasn't supposed to pick up. All right, don't, oh boy, can you edit that out, Mike? Please edit.
Lanny likes rocks and fossils.
Yay, all right, let's see. Maybe time to pause.
All right.
And we also have, well, my granddaughter's salt experiment showing how salt is, like at a salt lick. You know, it comes out when the water is high and lays on the logs or whatever, and then the water recedes, so then you get salt that attracted mastodons and deer and people, you know, to build, harvest the salt at first that was on the surface, then drill wells down to bring up the salt, which happened in Saline also. And other stuff, we have seashells, if anybody knows somebody that likes a seashell, and coal, like in Grand Ledge, it used to have a coal yard just across the tracks from the freight house. So I asked permission, there was an office in the abandoned gas station there, and go in, and there's coal lumps and pieces the size of a baking potato. So very fun. And the conveyor that was used to take the coal left by the railroad hopper car and lift it up and put it in trucks to be delivered to basements in the area. And the tires are now deflated for decades and is laying flat on the ground, but it's a remnant. And what else we got? Oh, have a little loop if anybody wants to look. It's set up so if you press, oh, no, it won't work as well. There it goes. It'll make light, and then you can look at maybe better.
Don't they mine salt in Manistee too?
Yes, well, it's by brine extraction.
Isn't that where Morton is?
Yes, yes, you're right. Up and around Saginaw Bay, that was huge. Yes, and well, coal, Jackson, Michigan, east of Lansing. I've heard that at the intersection north of Grand Ledge of M100 and Grand River, that huge farm field to the southeast corner of that intersection, Board of Water and Light has the mining rights for the coal under there. It wouldn't be high heat content, but if you just couldn't get coal by rail, they'd have a backup. And oh yeah, obsidian, which, you know, volcano origin, and other fossils. And oh, here we have flint. And so you can make sparks like the natives did and carve arrowheads or whatever just with children especially, be very careful that their primary hand is doing the striking, because, you know, it's sharp as a razor. And once I was demonstrating safety to a class, and I used my secondary hand to do the striking, and I nicked my finger, got a owie. So, not embarrassing. But, oh, there's a spark.
Grandchildren, that's what you don't do.
Yes, there we go. So, I think that's all I have, but go ahead.
Why does the rock salt turn to salt water? What,
It takes it in water, it soaks up
it
water.
just soaks up the water from the air?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, that's my theory.
that explains why my bucket of salt turned into a bucket of salty water.
Yep, there you go, and that's what it somehow, I don't quite understand when it's, below freezing, where does the salt on the roads get the water to turn into mush? How does it get started? But I guess somehow at a atomic level, it's taking water out of the air or out of the ice, and then that, as soon as you get a drop of salt, water and salt together, then the salt dissolves in the water, and you start exploding into mush, and that, so it melts and hopefully flows away down a drain. So we live on Eaton Highway, and they put brine down, and so the truck came along, and it appears that, well, it was the end of shift for the driver, so on our side of the road, we just dumped the tank, and so we've had zero grass there, this wide, and from here to this post, bare, dead. So that's living in the country. Okay, well, good questions, huge. And we also have, I know, I've compiled lists of fun things to do within a day trip of Lansing area, and there's stuff like Alligator Sanctuary, Boulder Ridge, Lazy F Ranch up by Ionia, where you can feed the bison and buy ground buffalo meat, bison meat, and other stuff that's fun. So, and the other side is rock-focused fun. So that's up here too.
Some of those are advertised in the Tri-River book too.
I betcha, yes. Yep. Yeah, that was maybe my source for several. Yes, yes.
Where's our open pit mines located in the UP?
Iron Mountain area, Alpha and Crystal Falls, Michigan, farther west, and then follows the border up Iron River, Ironwood, alphabetic, up, and then it goes on into,
They're still working them?
no. The only one left is,
So those aren't, you don't do any more open pit mining in Michigan?
well, there's one left now. I think I worked there decades ago as a contract employee.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, Tilden. But the Empire, which was a huge open pit mine, like on the poster, that's shut down too.
They reclaim any of that, or is it just sitting
No,
there?
no, it's just setting. Yep. Some of the waste is, well, it says powder. They grind it so fine, the iron, to make pellets. And let's see. So maybe it's used in construction or as a filler in cement block manufacture.
Those places you like to go and look around, those open pit mines?
Well, they're fenced and you're
I
not
know they won't
supposed
let you, but you would like to.
I would like to.
Yeah.
Or even at Baldwin. There was the town of Marlborough, just southeast of Baldwin, and there was marl there. And so let's put up a cement making factory, and they had their own powerhouse and a couple hotels and banks and homes, stores of 120 years ago, because the marl was to last forever. And in 3 years they exhausted the commercial valuable marl. So, but they built much of the surface structures out of cement, so they still stand. But it's posted, and the locals
What's marl used for?
It's marl, yeah.
marl cement, I think, part of the component of cement is basically limestone and sand sediment, and
Is that soft?
it's like mud.
White?
No,
It's not white.
no, well, I took some in a little bucket from the lake bottom where they used to dredge it from.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Got
it's-
it off our lake, and all kinds of white marl comes up when they dredged it.
Oh, wow,
That's south of Lake Odessa over there.
wow.
Yeah, that's what we call it, marl. I just curious
Yes,
what it was.
M-A-R-L,
Yeah, it
yes.
came up, big white chunks of it, you know. and-
Oh, boy, I'll have to MapQuest your location
Okay,
and
that's
sneak
easy.
out there some night. And, but they went big up in Marlborough. They had a railroad, and you can still see the wood structure that's just under the water surface now, for a little bridge that would support a train to cross over, because it's basically wetland. And there are public access point for fishing and recreation, so we went to those. And so it's all these nuggets out there that I enjoy finding and exploring much.
When they mine potash, how do they mine it? With water? You mean
Yeah,
they
the solution
liquefy
is
it
piped down,
and
and
then
then
pump it out?
brought up in another well,
Mhm.
and there are many wells. They just shotgun the area around Evart,
Then it evaporates the water out?
or
and then
chemical
plus let-
processing. I
chemical.
don't, you know, in this climate, it'd take a while to
Yeah, I
evaporate.
didn't know how they.
Yeah, it's a
did it.
factory. There weren't any big ponds there for evaporation. And let's see. And then right across the street, or well, County Road, is a salt producing company. And so it's a very dynamic place that way. And Everett sees, potential for lots of jobs. And so you gotta give them credit how that's going to play out. Let's see.
You mentioned Kingsford,
Yes.
and there was an article, I don't know if it was in the last, it must have been 2 issues ago, from the Historical Society, their magazine, all about Kingsford and the production of charcoal.
Oh, how neat is that? Yep, that is, well, thank you for sharing. Because, go ahead.
I'm interested in that formation of the rock basin.
Yes.
Now, you said that the rocks, the rocks underneath all the rest of the earth, that has a big, how deep is that basin, would you say?
Oh, okay, I think I have a
Thousands
chart.
of feet? How deep
Yes,
in the
let's look
earth?
at the scale.
And was that created then when the continent was moving?
I think it was more, by that time it was stationary, and this is where things have been for a long, I know, on
So that
this.
would that be like millions of years ago?
Yes, on the sidebar here, there's a chart that shows ages.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Wisconsin, what's the oldest?
And you said that's the largest basin, one of the largest basins in the world?
Yes. Yep. It should give this years here someplace. I'll have to look at the break.
But that would be like millions of years ago?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
tens of
When-
millions
And then
probably.
when the continent was stationary, the glaciers were coming down and carving out that same
Yeah, the
basin?
Mitten, Lake Michigan, the Great Lakes were scooped out by
Thou-
the bulldozer.
A couple times, right?
Yes, several, maybe
But the last
3 or
time
4 at least.
the last time we know of was about what, 10 to 12,000 years?
Yes, and that's, a book
And
I-
then when did all that Appalachia rocks and gravel come down to mountains, when the mountain was, when that
Oh.
mountain range was, and fill in that
Well, I think,
basin?
yeah, we get a clue sometime between the oldest rocks and the youngest.
Oh, yeah,
that-
that's what
that series.
I needed.
I wondered why, I thought it was,
Those are Becky's glasses.
yes, I thought it was something from, oh, boy, oh, boy. Oh, Yes, I will do the research when we conclude. Oh, boy. Oh, I got one to share. I married a young lady from Fowler. Maybe you know the Schaefers and Phelan. They had a farm on Parks Road. And so brought me in to meet the folks first time, and as usual, the women went into the kitchen to discuss, and my future father-in-law was at the TV and in the living family room area, and I heard her mom tell her, Kathy, you understand that all he's good for is drinking beer and solving equations. Which I don't have the farm sense, as we know. Or with the tripod. But she took a leap of faith, and very thankful. We have 7 grandchildren to prove it. So I guess that concludes me, but questions and help yourself is great. Thank you, Margaret and Mike. Yeah, that's good. We'll do the research on the numbers.
Hate it when the guests get away with that.
That's what's amazing to think about, the volcanoes. It's always important to
Right now.
Yeah, and I never knew that, that was
This is by the water treatment plant. So we're going back Yes,
Where is Salisbury?
downriver, I think downriver,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not west, Saline, Saline.
He's just as you're looking at tape.
I think